All right, so this turnout is spectacular, absolutely, way beyond what we were fearing, especially since we only concocted the notion of holding this a few weeks ago when we realized we were a week away. Today we are a week away from a major meeting with the administration about salaries. So your turning out is already a huge success, and so we can all go back now to the lobby and have a drink instead. But there are a few formalities to be presented before we can do that. So I'll give a very brief overview of the salary situation that we're in. And then Ken Hastings will give an equally brief overview about non-salary compensation. And then we will join you at the various tables, which, as you know, have been organized by topic. And there are on each table, there should be some sheets with issues, with a list of things to think about having to do with the topic of your table. And what we'll do is we'll spend 20 minutes or so jabbering at each table about what ideas we have, and then we'll briefly report to the rest of the group. And the point of the entire exercise is that you people come up with some ideas that we can take to the CASC meeting. CASC is the committee for the Committee on Academic Salary and Compensation. Okay, so all ideas that you can give us and help us in arguing our case with the administration are welcome. And this is where I'm hoping to get some of them, at least some of them that we haven't had yet. So here's a quick overview. I am, by the way, Axel Vandenberg, the current president of the MAUT. 42 more days. Yeah. So, traditionally, the university has claimed to follow a couple of principles, or has pronounced a couple of principles. One is that the average salary plus the across the board increase plus a category 4, which is very low, merit increase should just cover projected inflation. Okay, that's always been the sort of it's not a written rule, but it's always been sort of the understood target. The second is a quote from a letter by Luc Vinet of the year 2004. We have several of these claims and statements made by our provosts, including one by Tony Massey and earlier by Principal Shapiro. McGill will ensure that its academic salaries remain at or above the mean for the top 10 Canadian universities. Now our comparative group is the top 15, so we should be at, if you take the median rather than the mean, we should be number 7, at least, according to this rule. There have been declarations to the effect that we should be higher than that, and of course our guiding slogan is that we really should be at number 3 at least. This is, by the way, thanks to Janine, who came up with this fantastic, I think, slogan for our campaign. So if you look at the actual numbers, I'll show you in a minute, and by the way, I'll be happy to share this set of slides with anybody who is interested in having them and passing them on to your colleagues. If you crunch the numbers from the data that we've been given, explaining to us what our current increase is going to be, which, as you know, is a measly 2.15%, divided over a 0.75% across the board increase, and then the rest in merit. If you look at those figures, you can calculate what the average salary is that corresponds to the figures that we've been given. It's $116,000. So the question here is, what would a person at $116,000 need to get in order to cover inflation, just to stay afloat? And our quick calculation shows that they would have to get, as you can see at the bottom, they would have to get a category 2 merit increase. Anybody below that does not cover, at average salary, does not cover inflation, so loses real income. Another way of looking at it is above what income is it impossible to match inflation, even if you get a category 1, the top merit increase. And that number turns out to be 161,000, which is well below the median for full professors. So it means that more than half, certainly considerably more than half of full professors are not going to meet inflation this year. Their real income is actually going to decline. Another way of looking at it is at what salary level does a category 4 merit increase plus the across-the-board 0.75% cover inflation, and that turns out to be at a salary level that is below the lowest salary at which we now recruit people. So it's not the case for everyone who receives a category 4 increase will in fact lose real income. All right? So that's pretty spectacular. Now here are the figures on which this is based, and you can see here are the years. There were years in which we got no increase at all. In 2013, for instance. Then there were 3 years with relatively high increases. This is of some, can you read this? Is this legible still, even though the numbers are very small? And that lasted until June 2017, and then we have the current 3-year cycle, which was less than half of what we got in the previous 3 years. And the way we calculated it is, you can see here what the, I have to remind myself now, what a category 4 merit plus the across the board raise for an average salary produces. And you can see, and in red here, you see when that number is below the inflation rate. So in effect, over the last, since 2011, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, 8 salary increases. 3 of those 8, we actually met the target that the university says it's trying to meet. And so it's not all that surprising that we're not doing so well in the rankings. Here you have an overview, again, I apologize for the quality, but you have an overview from 2011 onwards of where we are in average salaries by rank. So this is full professor and then associate and assistant professor compared to the other U15 universities. We've been lingering around 11, 12, sometimes 10 for many years. Now the last couple of years look better, but these are of course the effects of previous salary increases. So we have climbed a little bit in the last couple of years because of the effect of those 3 years that we had highest increases, but this is of course at least a year behind, and you can bet your last dollar, of which you have so few, that we're going to be down at number 11 again in the year after, and maybe further down to number 12. What we would like to reach is number 7, right? And you can see here that a full professor, on average full professor, would have to get another $6,000 in order to make it to the 7th place. For associate professors, it's considerably more. It's $10,000, and for assistant professors, it's about $7,000. And then they're only at number 7. Right? Another way of, or one way of calculating what would be needed, and that's not even to get to number 7, but simply, and this is courtesy our friend Jacques Urtubise, who did this calculation, did a simulation. He said, what does it look like for an assistant professor to move through the ranks and to make it after a reasonable number of years to associate professor and ending up with an average associate professor salary, and then another number of years to full professor. Rather than looking at the salary mass, look at the individual following a career trajectory. what does that take? Well, it turns out if you do a very reasonable calculation, and if you only assume that in each rank the salaries on average go up by the rate of inflation and no more, so everybody is basically treading water, if you assume that, then you still would need every year for a period of 20 to 24 years, every year you would have to have a salary increase of 4 to 5%. In order just to make it to the average of the next rank. Not to increase your salary. Never mind to increase your salary relative to productivity and all that other kind of stuff. Another way of calculating, and this is really the one that we came up with as maybe our sort of our minimum demand from the university, if we can make demands since we're not a union. If we want to get up to number 7 or number 8, of the U15, what would be necessary? We've looked at the collective agreements and other kinds of agreements that have been signed so far in the U15 to the extent that they're available, and it looks like the average increase is going to be between 3 and 3.5%. Over those years for the U15. So if we want to match that and we want to try to climb a little bit, only a few steps, 2 or 3 steps in the rankings, we would have to ask for a 3-year increase of 17%, roughly. And at 15%, we'd only get to U8 rather than U7. And that represents about $15 million of a budget of $270 million. So it's not even an outrageous amount of money that the university would have to come up with in order to meet that goal. So, as I said, this is our sloganeering again, and the point is that exactly a week from now, there will be a meeting with the so-called Strategic Working Group on Academic Salaries, which is a new entity that we've created in order to meet with the administration about issues of long-term salary policy. And it's a crucial one because this is the first one in a series that will produce, in the end, the next 3-year cycle. So this is why we've called you all here, to show our strength and to show how mobilizable we are in the good cause of getting our salaries to become commensurate with where we really are otherwise in the rankings of the U15. So I'll leave it at that. As I said, if you're interested in getting these slides, then let me know and I'll send it to you, no problem. I'll give the floor now to Ken, who will briefly talk about non-salary compensation, and then we'll sit around the tables and talk about our various assigned topics. This is yours, right?
Yes, that's it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Axel. I don't know how important that is. Let's see if I can. Okay, I'm going to talk about non-salary compensation. That's often called benefits and pension. And I'll warn you that it's a dry presentation. I'm going to show you what I'm going to say. So you don't even have to look at the slides. You can listen to me if you just prefer that. But and there are a few tables in there that you might want to look at. But I'm presenting this at a basic level. Parts of it are very complex, especially the pension plan. And my understanding is not at the very, very top. It's very hard to find people who really understand all the pension plans. So I'm going to talk simply because that's my level of understanding. So how do I do? I guess I'll go like this. So non-salary compensation is elements that the administration pays, the university pays, that are not part of our salary. And they come in 2 flavors, basically. Those that are specific to the academic staff and those that we share with all the other employee groups. So for benefits in general and the pension, we're part of a single pool at McGill. All the employees of McGill are in the same unit, basically. Now, there are some specific elements for academic staff, and one of them is the Professional Development Fund, which is currently an amount of $750 a year that you can use for various things, travel to meetings, subscriptions to journals, computers, software, things like that. But the most important ones, I'm not going to talk about sabbatic leave. I had put that in under this category, but I pulled it out because I realized, look, that really is about salary, so I've set that aside. But what we have in common with all employees in a single pool are our insurance plans and our pension plan. So I'm going to talk very, very briefly about insurance plans and then take most of the few minutes that I have to talk about the pension plan. So the insurance plans are, let's see if I can find my cursor here. Oh, there it is. Okay. So we have supplemental health and dental plans, and we have several accident, basic life insurance, and short-term disability insurance. And the idea is that we pay part of some of these and the university pays part. This is not working for me. Forget it. Okay. So, for example, in the case of the supplemental health and dental plans, we share the cost 50-50 with the university there. So we pay half, they pay half, and that the actual amounts for the current year are $1170 a year for the family plan, for the family coverage in the supplemental health plan, and $683 for the dental plan. So that's about $1,800 a year the university is contributing to your life, if you like, outside of your salary. And for the accident and basic life insurance and short-term disability, we pay nothing. The university pays 100% of the premiums to purchase that insurance. And I don't happen to know what the dollar value is for those, but there is certainly some cost associated with that. Now, the pension plan, this is the biggest item, really. I want to first just make sure, because what I've learned over the years is that people are amazingly ignorant about the pension plan. Honestly, I'm always shocked. And you know, what I know is only about this compared to what I need to know, but I'm sure, so what I'll do is I'll assume that there are at least some people out there who really don't know anything about it, okay? So what are general characteristics of a registered pension plan? The employer always and the employee usually contribute to the plan. The employee contributions are income tax exempt as long as the combined employee and employer contributions do not exceed 18% of the gross salary. And if there's the fund during the time that it's maintained can grow because it's invested, and that growth is not at any point subject directly to any capital gains tax of any kind. The fund grows and eventually it's converted into income, so it is then taxed as income tax. There isn't any capital gains per se. And the way pension plans are structured, there are three major types: defined benefit, or DB, defined contribution, DC, and hybrid plan. So I'll talk about them very briefly. But first I'll mention that there are reasons for all of them, okay? And the reality is that from CAUT information, about 1/3 of Canadian university pension plans fall into each of those categories. So you can't say that there's, you know, there's division of thought about this. So the defined benefit, this is the one most readily imagines, that regardless of any investment growth or loss of the fund after the contributions have been put in, the employee on retirement receives a known amount of money annually from the plan. For example, monthly checks. Okay? And the benefit, the money you get, is calculated according to a formula like this: X%, the bottom line there, where X is a number between 1 and 2, something on that order. X% times average salary over the best 5 years times the number of years of service. So this is how defined benefit plans are structured. Now, McGill is not a DB plan. It's not a defined benefit plan. So you will not be receiving monthly checks from McGill when you retire. And I think if you didn't know that and you're hearing it now, this is the one thing that you need to remember as when you walk out of the room. You are not going to get monthly checks. What you will get in principle, there's a lot of ways it can play out, but what you get in principle is a single lump sum payment of the total value of your account. And this will typically be now in the ballpark of $1 million. You know, it varies quite a bit, but nonetheless, this will give you an idea. You should expect to have, if you have your whole career here, $1 million at some point. And the idea is that it's your money in a DC plan. You can do whatever you want with it. You can go right down to the casino, blow it that day, and have a great time. But the idea is that you will take that money and you will use it to fund your retirement years. So to continue with the other two major types of plan besides the DB plan, there's defined contribution. So the employer and the employee contributions are fixed. Defined contribution. The contributions are fixed. And when the employee retires, the entire value of the fund is given to them, just like I just mentioned. There's one single payment from the plan, and then the employee is no longer part of the plan. You exit the plan with your $1 million, whatever. The third and last type is the hybrid plan, and the hybrid plan is basically a defined contribution plan with an added element. And that added element is that regardless of the investment returns, the lump sum payment that you receive at the end cannot be less than a certain amount. Whereas in a pure defined contribution plan, there is no lower limit, there is no floor to what you get what it's worth. In the hybrid plan, you get what it's worth down to a floor, and that floor is an amount of money that if you went out and purchased an annuity with that much, should I say what an annuity is? Would anybody want me to mention what an annuity is? Okay, all right. An annuity is if you have a lump sum of money and you want to turn that into an income stream, you go to a life insurance company and you say, I've got $1 million, what will you give me per year for the rest of my life if I give you the $1 million? Okay, and then they'll give you a number. So that's what an annuity is. So in a hybrid plan, the lump sum payment you get at the end, it has to be big enough to purchase an annuity that would pay you a certain salary called the defined benefit minimum. And that defined benefit minimum is calculated more or less, as I mentioned before, for a DB plan, X% times best 5 years average salary and years of service. So until January 1st, 2009, the McGill University Pension Plan was a hybrid plan. And in January 1st, 2009, the plan split into two parts, Part A and Part B. So those who were in the plan before January 1st, 2009 are Part A. They're a hybrid plan, just as the plan has been for many, many years. Part B is a defined contribution plan. So those who have joined the plan after January 1st, 2009 are in a defined contribution context. So the McGill plan is a split plan. It's not one of the, I gave you 3 options. McGill is 2 of the 3. Okay. So what's better for the employee? Well, it depends on the economic and financial conditions. So in a defined benefit plan, the output is fixed. What you get is known ahead of time and fixed. And it's a defined benefit. And in a defined contribution plan, the output is not fixed. It can be high. It can be very high, or it can be low. So when the markets and interest is strong and investment growth is good, a defined contribution plan is better than a defined benefit plan, because the excess growth over what was projected is that money is kept by the employee. That the employee gets all the surplus growth. In a DB plan, your benefit is already predetermined and fixed. So, but when market and interest are weak and investment growth is not good, a defined benefit plan can be better, because the defined benefit might actually have a greater value than the value of the funds in your account at that point. So it depends on the market situation and interest rates. So there's no simple answer, what's better, defined contribution or defined benefit? It depends, it depends, it depends, okay? So I forgot to say that if that happens, if the value of the defined benefit is worth more than the content of the plan itself, then the employer has to make additional contribution to top up the fund so it can provide the defined benefit minimum. So overall plans, good and bad, overall market conditions, good and bad, the hybrid plan might be better. You might call it better. It's got the good characters of the DC plan. Like the DC plan, excess growth is kept by the employee, and like the DB plans, there's a minimum amount that you know that you are going to be getting X amount, okay? So that's a floor. So in principle, Part A is advantageous compared to Part B. I've tried to slice it many different ways. I always end up here at this point. Part A is advantageous compared to Part B, but there's an additional cost for Part A members. And that cost is that since January 2014, the Part A employees share the funding deficit of the plan. In other words, when money is needed to go into the plan to give people their defined benefit, that's not just coming from the university now. It's coming partly from the university and partly from Part A members who benefit from that. And that cost sharing was initially 2.2%, and in September 2018 was reduced to 1.9% because the solvency of the plan had evolved, had improved a bit. So I'll end by just giving you an idea how that works, which is that this is the contribution scheme. So at different stages in your life, you contribute different amounts. 5% up to age 39, 7%, 40 to 49, and then 50 to 65, 8%. And the university matches or exceeds those contributions according to this schedule here. And over 65, McGill makes no contribution, and you make no necessary contribution. However, you are allowed to put money, make additional voluntary contributions, if you like. So that's the general structure of the plan, but now we can consider the Part A cost sharing. And so it's currently 1.9% of salary. So the employee contribution for Part A members is plus 1.9%. So I've just put in every case, I've just added 1.9% to what the Part A people are contributing into the plan. But Part A people don't end up with more money in the plan because the university contribution is diminished by that exact same amount, 1.9%. So like if you take up to age 39, and that's Part B. That is the formula for Part B, right? So both up to age 39, both Part A and Part B people will have 10% of their salary deposited into their account. However, the Part A people will have paid more from they will have contributed a larger part of that 10% than the Part B people. So there's a difference of 1.9. So Part B people take home about currently 1.9% more pay at the same salary than Part A people. Now the McGill is contributing less at each point, and the idea is McGill takes that 1.9% and plows that into the fund in a way to reduce the liabilities. So that money does end up in the fund, not in individual accounts, but in the fund. And I must say, I do not understand the légèrement that goes on behind there. But that money does appear in the plan. And in fact, usually McGill makes larger contributions than that. In the end, the employer is responsible within the context of the plan, right? So, so I think I just wanted to outline the plan there. I'm just going to show a final picture here from the brochure of the plan. Don't pay any attention to the numbers. You might study them at some point for interest, but what I'm showing here is that the pension plan is a part of your post-retirement income, right? It's a major part. It should be the tallest bar, but there's the QPP, and OAS may also, the Canadian Old Age Security payments may be relevant, and so you have to factor all of that into account when you're thinking about what things will be like when you retire. So that's a sort of a quick flight over the terrain of the benefits and pension.
Those are all extremely useful suggestions. Thank you very much. We will take them. We'll have a meeting tomorrow with a sort of a working group trying to put these suggestions into a coherent package. I would like to ask those of you who reported from your respective tables to do what John Galbraith just suggested and send me very, very summarily a couple of the major things that came up at your table so that we can revisit those. I've tried to take some down, but I'm sure I missed a few. Apart from that, I want to thank the organizers of this event, particularly Nate, Dror, Etzion, Janine, and Nathan, so pretty much the executive but me, for having organized this really on the fly, because we only had the idea of doing this, as I said, a few weeks ago, so they did a fantastic job. I wanted to thank them hereby. And the fact that so many of you showed up is a huge, huge weapon in our arsenal, obviously. And now it is time to have a drink and be merry. See you all in the lobby.